Thank you, Valentina. Good morning and welcome to the 2019 Georgia Women of Achievement Induction Ceremony. I'm Vivia Fowler. I'm the president of Wesleyan College and the treasurer of the Georgia Women of Achievement Board of Trustees. On behalf of the students, faculty, and staff of Wesleyan College, I'm so pleased to welcome you today. As the first college chartered to grant degrees to women, Wesleyan has been educating women and celebrating their achievements since 1836. So it was a natural thing that former First Lady Rosalind Carter would come to Wesleyan in 1988 to present her idea for Georgia Women of Achievement and the first induction ceremony, which was held at Wesleyan in 1992. This year marks the 28th anniversary of this occasion. Many of the founding members of the Georgia Women of Achievement are no longer with us: Frank Jones, Valeria Murphy, and Neva Fickling. But in addition to Mrs. Carter, founders Dr. Bob Ackerman, former president of Wesleyan, and Colleen Nunn could not be with us today, and we want to express our gratitude for their vision and leadership. However, we are fortunate today to have two of the founding members with us, and they are Nancy Anderson and Eleanor Lane. Please join me in recognizing them. We salute the friends and family of this year's honorees, and we welcome all of you to Wesleyan College today and every day. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Penny Elkins, Mercer's Senior Vice President for Enrollment Management and President of the Georgia Women of Achievement Board of Trustees. Penny.
Thank you, Vivia. Good morning, everyone. I am thrilled to be here today to honor these two incredible women, so we definitely look forward to hearing about them soon on the program. I have served as president for almost a year, not quite a year, of the Board of Trustees of Georgia Women of Achievement, and I'll tell you that it's been one of the greatest professional honors of my career. These women that I get to work with and these men that I get to work with are incredible leaders and human beings, and you all know that. Great people. I'm glad that you've joined us today. Now, speaking of those leaders, I've followed in the footsteps of a lot of them and a lot of good ones. So I want to talk about our Board of Trustees for just a moment. We have an incredibly dedicated board this year. I was telling them earlier as we were preparing for the run of show and getting ready for you all to join us today that each and every one of them has contributed an incredible amount of work to make this day a success. So I'd like to ask our current trustees to please stand. Thank you, ladies. Thank you. You may be seated. Now, we are obviously standing here today, but we know that there's a long legacy of trustees and honorary trustees and board presidents who have served in our stead but previously. So if you were a former trustee or an honorary trustee, we've already recognized some of our founders over here. I want these people to know who you are. Will you please stand? If you were a trustee, look at that. Wow. That's incredible. Thank you all. That's incredible. Great room full of wonderful leaders. I would like to pause for a moment, I think it's only fitting, to recognize one of our trustees who actually passed away this past June. She had been on the board just a short period of time before she passed away. One of our most dedicated volunteers, and many of you will know this name, Dr. Beth Faroki, served as our education chairperson. She worked incredibly hard on her mission of educating the state's young people about our mission and about the visionary leaders that we've sponsored over the years. A longtime educator herself, Beth established relationships with various resources across the state, sharing our educational mission all the way to the state capitol. Today, we honor and thank Beth for her vision and hard work. I love this quote by her son, Amir. You know, when we think about honoring these incredible women and the current women today who are working on behalf of GWA, I thought, wow, this is a great quote to kind of summarize who we all are. Her son, Amir, said, as he was quoted at her death, that when he credited his mother with instilling in him an infectious curiosity for the world, but above all else, he said, she always encouraged them just to be good people. And I thought, isn't that incredible? Wouldn't we all like to be remembered that way? That we want to learn about the world and our history and people, but we want to be good people. And that was certainly true of our friend Beth. Because of women like Beth, because of our founding trustees, because of our dedicated volunteers, our current partners, everyone in the room, the Georgia Women of Achievement continues its legacy today. Each year, you know that the Georgia Women of Achievement receives nominations from across the state, from individuals, from families, from universities, from organizations. All of those nominations are actually compiled and reviewed and vetted very carefully and seriously by our Board of Selections. The Board of Selections is actually independent of the Board of Trustees, purposefully, so that they can be very objective in their review of these incredible women. There are some of our current Board of Selections members are here with us today. You saw them process in with us, but I'd like for them to stand as well and be recognized. Thank you for all the hard work that you do. Yeah. Now, this person is not going to want me to do this. Don't worry, I'm not going to recognize too many more people, but this one I have to. The Georgia Women of Achievement has benefited from one individual, a former trustee, who has been with us over a decade serving this organization. Now, when I say this name, y'all are all going to go, yep, he's the one that got me in this organization. But anyway, oftentimes, besides Ed, oftentimes the only man on a board of women, Abbott Massey, is a true leader who has proven his dedication to the women of this state. He has supported us in every way. He's the one that got me on the board, by the way. And we are thrilled to announce that we awarded him last evening in a private reception the designation of honorary trustee. Abbott, would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you again. Congratulations to you. Georgia Women of Achievement has three primary goals, and this is why we're all so incredibly passionate about this organization and the women that we induct each year. We aim to honor influential women of the past. We want to inspire today's citizens, men and women, to really utilize their positions to impact the world and make the world a better place because of them. And finally, to educate young people to discover their unique talents and skills to build a stronger tomorrow. We are most proud of the stories that we tell of the magnificent contributions made by each of our Hall of Fame members. But, as you all know, we've got to continue to tell the story. We have still much work to do. We have big dreams, and we want every young person in this state, this is our vision, to know about these amazing women who persevered, who led society, who created solutions, who developed new solutions to tremendous problems, and remain tenacious under difficult circumstances throughout our state. So I want to recognize one more person who is one of those young women that we're trying to inspire. One thing that we've done this year with the Georgia Women of Achievement, as we have decided to embrace our interns that we share. Vivi is obviously at Wesleyan, I'm at Mercer University, so we're all about serving others and educating our young people. And one of the incredible young women at Mercer University, Megan Steele, has served as our marketing and communications intern, and she's right over here with the camera in her hand. So I want you to know Megan. I will say something about her later, but Megan, you're the reason we're doing this, you understand. It's all about you. So these beautiful programs, this beautiful PowerPoint, everything you see that looks lovely. If it doesn't, Megan didn't do it. If it does, we're going to attribute it to her. So thank you, Megan, so very much. At this time, I would like to invite one of our trustees, Ann W. Sapp, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, Penny. We are so honored to have with us today Dean Kathy Cox. Dean Cox is the Dean of Mercer University School of Law. She is a 1986 magna cum laude graduate of the Mercer Law School and the first alumni to lead the school. Dean Cox previously served as president of Young Harris College, leading its transition from a two-year college to a four-year institution. Prior to assuming her role as the president of Young Harris, Dean Cox served two terms as Georgia's Secretary of State. She was the first woman in the state's history to be elected to this post. As Secretary of State, Dean Cox instituted a universal electronic voting system, making Georgia the first state to do so. A native of Bainbridge, Georgia, Dean Cox began her political career as a member of the Georgia House of Representatives. She earned a degree in journalism from the University of Georgia and is the 2013 inductee to the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication Fellowship. In 2007, Kathy held the Carl E. Sanders Political Leadership Chair at the University of Georgia's School of Law. Dean Cox is also holds an associate degree in agriculture from Abraham Baldwin College of Agriculture in Tifton. After graduating from Mercer Law School, where she was editor-in-chief of the Mercer Law Review and a member of the Brainerd Curie Honor Society, Dean Cox practiced law in Atlanta and in Bainbridge. She has remained an active member of the Georgia Bar and in 2011 was presented with the Traditions of Excellence Award by the General Practice section of the Georgia Trial Association. A former member of Mercer's Board of Trustees and the Mercer Law School Board of Visitors, Dean Cox was awarded an honorary Doctor of Law degree from Mercer in 2007. Dean Cox is a 1990 graduate of Leadership Georgia, an emeritus trustee of Wesleyan College, and was named Georgia's Woman of the Year in 2000 by the Georgia Commission on Women. Dean Cox is an active member of the United Methodist Church, is a member of numerous philanthropic and civic organizations, and serves on the board of directors for the United Community Banks. Please join me in welcoming our guest, Dean Kathy Cox.
Thank you very much, Ann, for your kind words this morning. Thank you, Dr. Elkins, for inviting me to join you today. Dr. Elkins provides great leadership for us at Mercer University, as many of you know. But it is also great to be back on the Wesleyan campus, where I have served as a trustee before, and to be in this beautiful chapel today, which is a wonderful addition to this spectacular campus. But it's really just like old home week for me to be here with so many of you who I haven't seen in a long time, and that is an extra treat to be with you today. But it's a pleasure to be here for this annual induction ceremony for this very special organization that I have long admired and supported. Your work in recognizing these important contributions of women to the state of Georgia over the decades has been so important because, as Penny said, so many of these contributions and so many of these women would otherwise not be recognized, and their stories would not have been told in the way that we have traditionally told the stories of Georgia history in the past. You are truly providing a more complete picture of Georgia history in what you are doing, and by doing so, you are empowering generations of young women to stand on the shoulders of these trailblazers. So thank you all for the work that you are doing and continue to do. It's also a treat to be here on the induction day for Dr. Denmark, who I had the chance to meet many years ago. So I'm looking forward to the rest of our program today. As you all probably know, March is celebrated as Women's History Month, and tomorrow, March 8th, is known as International Women's Day. It's also known as the United Nations Day for Women's Rights and International Peace, a day to celebrate women's achievements throughout history and across nations. Now, it's not a national holiday here in the United States, but it is a holiday in some countries, like Russia, believe it or not. They have celebrated International Women's Day since 1918. However, the focus there is on celebrating motherhood, beauty, and spring. That's, I guess the sum total of women's roles in Russia for the most part. So you can kind of take that with a grain of salt. I think it does have broader meanings in other countries. But personally, I'm sort of glad we don't have a holiday to celebrate this in America, and personally hope we don't. Because I think women have come such a long way in this country, and I'm encouraged, really encouraged, that we are seeing even today more ground-shifting cultural change because of women and in favor of women's rights. And in some ways, I think having a national holiday would almost sort of trivialize what women represent and what we continue to do as women in this country. So I, for one, am glad we're not celebrating a holiday for women. But the role of women has changed dramatically, as you all know, over the centuries, and even during the lifetime of many of us in the room today. As the first woman serving as Secretary of State, as the first female to practice law down in 11 counties of southwest Georgia, the first woman to get elected to the legislature down in rural southwest Georgia, the changing role of women is something I've given a lot of thought to over the years. So I wanted to start out this morning just taking a quick glimpse back, especially for our younger women in the room, to look at the role of women in the past century or so, and bringing it forward just a little bit. But to start back at that sort of historic time, 171 years ago, back in 1848, when those 5 bold women got together in that room for tea in upstate New York for what has come to be known as the first women's rights gathering, here was the condition of women at that time. Married women could own no property, not a house, not a car. Of course, there were no cars. They couldn't own cattle. They were legally dead in the eyes of the law. Women were certainly not allowed to vote. Women had to obey laws. They had to pay property taxes, but they could not be elected to the bodies that made those laws or levied those taxes. Husbands had legal power over and responsibility for their wives to the extent that they could imprison or beat their wives with no fear of being punished. Divorce and child custody laws favored men, giving no rights to women. Most occupations were closed to women, and when women did work outside of their homes, they were paid only a fraction of what men earned. Women had little means to gain an education since virtually no college or university would accept women, Wesleyan being the one exception, of course, being chartered as the first college to grant women degrees in 1836. And with only a few exceptions, women were not allowed to participate in the affairs of churches or synagogues anywhere in the country. Now, this was not the Middle Ages. This was just a little over 150 years ago, a brief time in historical measurements. But we have come a long way, baby. Look at what has happened. We are working in huge numbers. Back in 1976, America's bicentennial year, 43% of the women in the country were working outside of the home. Today, more than 57% of women over age 16 are working today, and almost 75% of them are working full-time. We have become educated. We are now outpacing men at earning all higher degrees. In 2015 to 16, women earned 57% of the bachelor's degrees, 59% of the master's degrees, and 52% of the doctorate degrees awarded in this country. That is worth celebrating. And I've certainly seen it firsthand even at Mercer Law School. In the fall of '27, our entering class was 54% female. This year, it jumped to 58% female. We are seeing the same surges of women enrolling in medical schools, engineering schools, and many other professional schools all over the country where women were once a severe minority. We own property now. We own and run our own businesses. We have laws that require equal rights, and yes, we can vote. But of course, that did not happen until about 1920, when the 19th Amendment to the Constitution was passed and ratified. And of course, one of those footnotes I like to remind people about in Georgia, that Georgia was the first to reject ratification of the 19th Amendment, because that Georgia General Assembly did not think we needed to bother our pretty little heads with voting. So they came out before anybody else to reject ratification of the 19th Amendment. But today, women make up, in Georgia, a majority of the voters in this state. More than 50%. We have the power to elect or defeat anyone in this state. So we have gone from having no power at the ballot box to being a solid majority of the voters. So virtually all of these things that were denied to women 100+ years ago are now open, because primarily a lot of women fought very hard to make sure these changes happened. But open to women does not always mean equally available or accessible. The way I see it, if you look back at these changes for women over the past century or more, most of the legal impediments for women have been removed. Laws have been changed or expanded to assure greater opportunities for women in places where they were flatly denied in the past. Many cultural stereotypes have changed. Society has come to accept and even embrace women in the workplace and in most places of leadership. And there's been significant progress even in acceptance of women in politics. As we all observed across the country last fall, women ran for office in larger numbers than ever before. Some say in response perhaps to their outrage at the policies or lack thereof and the overall treatment of women from what they were seeing in Washington, D.C. down to the local level. But they won, and they are already changing the tune and tone of national politics. And of course, it may depend on your perspective, from the 2016 presidential election or the 2018 Georgia gubernatorial race, as to whether you think women are truly accepted at the highest levels in politics. But I don't think it's anything to sneeze at by the fact that we already have 4 women, solid women, announced as candidates for president some 20 months ahead of the presidential election, and they're all being considered serious contenders at this point. There's still room for improvement, to be sure, and attitudes have to be changed, particularly in our own state, where we currently have no women serving again now in constitutional offices, a travesty, in my opinion. So we're not home free, even in Georgia. But overall, women have made so much progress. But one of the biggest barriers for women, in my view, falls within the realm of one 4-letter word. And that word is risk. R-I-S-K, risk. How women approach and embrace risk, in my opinion, is a huge factor in what still holds women back from accomplishing all that they can achieve in life, or getting attention focused on the issues that they think matter most to them. Because so many women, I fear, are afraid of risk. They're afraid of failure. They haven't been taught how to deal with risk or with failure. So I see women, young women, defaulting to the safe course, which thereby limits their options, limits their career choices, limits their potential, just because they're afraid to take a risk. And we women who were raised in the South are notoriously guilty of this, because we've all been raised to be so darn nice and polite about things. I think, as any of the women recognized by the Georgia Women of Achievement would likely tell us, being nice is not the formula for achieving your full potential. You have to learn to see risk as opportunities and to take calculated risk to go after the outcomes you want to achieve without being afraid of failure. Now, I think of it in the classic case of my life back to 2006. Some of you remember that far back, when I decided to run for governor of Georgia. And a lot of you in this room helped me do that. The lieutenant governor, of course, also wanted to run, and a lot of folks were concerned about the two of us running against each other. But I thought, honestly, that I could do a better job than he could, and I thought that I had a better chance at winning in the general election. But I had a lot of men, particularly, who said, well, you and the lieutenant governor just need to work it out, which I clearly understood to mean, Kathy, you just need to be nice and step aside and let the man take the job and wait your turn. But my response was, I don't generally try to pick fights, but I don't run from them either. And in this case, I believe I'm the better candidate. I believe I have a better chance to win, and I'm not going to just nicely step aside and make the path easier for what I saw as a lesser qualified man. I knew it was a big risk. I knew very well, as you know, in any kind of election, especially statewide, that I could lose. But I thought back to 1990. A lot of you remember that too, when Zell Miller had been lieutenant governor for 16 years, but 8 men signed up to run against him. That included Roy Barnes, Andrew Young, Johnny Isaacson. Do you think anybody went to those men and said, just work it out, wait your turn? It didn't happen. They got out there and fought it out, and Zell won fairly and squarely. So I ran. I raised $6 million with a lot of your help, which was just as much as my opponent raised in a time when people did not think women could raise money in politics. And I think I ran a much cleaner race that I can still be proud of today, in spite of the fact that I did not win. But that race opened up a lot of doors for me that led to completely unexpected opportunities in higher education, in serving on a bank board, in doing many things that I had never dreamed of, and those opportunities would never have come my way unless I had taken a very public risk and failed. And when I think about all the women who have been honored over these 28 years by Georgia Women of Achievement, it seems apparent to me that they also understood the importance of taking calculated risk. It seems obvious that many of them, if not most, were likely challenged in their pursuits. Many were probably told, "Be nice, don't take this pathway." Many were probably ridiculed and harassed for taking pathways and pursuing goals that were not considered traditional routes for women. But thank goodness they persevered. They took risk and were probably pushed back over and over, but they succeeded and changed the world for the rest of us. And their achievements continue to be lessons for us today. And here we are in 2019, at a time when laws have corrected most of the inequities faced by women, but we still need to address the remaining barriers, the stereotypes, the cultural traditions, the antiquated attitudes, which you can find in women and men who simply don't want to give women a chance. And then we need to do everything we can, every time we can, to encourage women to face those risks in front of them and to go out there and grab the gold. We should support programs like, for example, women's athletics that teach women that they can take an elbow and fall down and be knocked down and they can get up and win. We should concentrate on teaching our daughters and granddaughters and nieces that it's just as important to be strong and smart and independent as it is to be nice. We should encourage young women all around us to take that proverbial road less traveled, just as our honorees did. Because in taking those big risks, there are big opportunities. And women deserve a shot at those opportunities just like men. We can make that happen. We do make that happen by continuing to tell the stories of these Georgia honorees. If we empower girls and boys, women and men, and teach girls and women that risk is not a four-letter word to be feared, we can help new generations of women achieve even loftier goals. These are lessons that we need in 2019 just as they were for women in 1919 when women had no right to vote and faced more severe and overt barriers. But persevere we must by empowering women and girls of today with the lessons of those who paved the road for us, and by reaching out to assure that today's girls and women can face and conquer the risk that they face today, we are going to effect change. We are setting the stage and planting the seeds for Georgia Women of Achievement's next 100 years of honorees. I think that is pretty exciting, a lot more exciting than a one-day holiday. So thank you for having me today. Thank you for the important work that you continue to do.
Please join me in thanking Dean Cox for these inspiring words. Thank you.
Climb every mountain, search high and
Thank you, Nadine. That was beautiful. And Valentina on piano happens to be a Wesleyan student. She did a fantastic job as well. Thank you both. That was incredible. Yes. And my dear friend Kathy, thank you for inspiring us, my friend. Yes, that was beautiful. All right, so take risks. That's the word for today. Now is one of, I have really been looking forward to this, you all. I love hearing about these incredible women. By the way, if you haven't gone to our website recently to recall the stories and see the videos of all those women that we have inducted over the past years, I encourage you to do that. I challenge you to do that. It just kind of recenters you and gives you the opportunity and the courage to take those risks and climb your mountain and say, hey, we can do this. So today I am thrilled to induct two more incredible women. This time, I was thinking about it this morning as I was reflecting. I feel like I just want to sit at the feet of these women and just hear their stories. And we're about to do that, and it's going to be a great time. I want to invite Jan Moore, who serves as Vice President of our Georgia Women of Achievement, to the podium to introduce our first honoree. Jan.
I know I don't look old enough to put these on, but I did nonetheless. I want to briefly thank Dean Cox for those words of inspiration, and I will tell you that you didn't know this when you were saying those words, but my daughter is in the back of the room, and she came today. So Jenny, did you hear all of that? Did you take note? Very well, good. I can't wait to hear what mountain you have in mind on the way home. I'm here today to introduce our first inductee, Leela Alice Daughtry Denmark. Your program says that that Dr. Denmark was born in Athens, Georgia. As a native of Bullock County, Georgia, I can assure you she was not. She was actually born in Bullock County, Georgia. She lived... That was not Megan's fault, and you know what? I proved it, but my people won't like me when I get home if I don't correct that, and you know how that goes. So, as you can see in your program, she lived in Atlanta most of her life. She was a pioneer in pediatric medicine research and an advocate for the pediatric community. She was co-developer of the pertussis vaccine, whooping cough, and is greatly known throughout pediatric medicine for that tremendous accomplishment that affected positively so many people in our country and around the world. Until her retirement in 2011, she was the world's oldest practicing pediatrician. And I believe she retired from practicing. I don't have my notes in front of me. I promise you they were in this book, but they are not here. So I want to say at the age of 108. All right, correct me.
My mother practiced until 2001.
There we go.
At the age of 103. Her eyesight was going downhill. So she retired from actual practice, but she continued to advise patients for another few years after that. And after that, there began to be memory issues. So she did not retire in 2011. By 2011, things were not going so well. But she had a long run.
That is the understatement of the day, I can assure you.
So just remember 2001, and she was born in Bullock County, and what became the town of Coral. There was no town there when she was born. So definitely deep root, very deep root.
Very. And for those of y'all who don't know, I was going to introduce, but this is Dr. Denmark's daughter, Mary Denmark Hutcherson. It was coming, but a pioneering female doctor, medical researcher, and an outspoken voice in the pediatric community, Dr. Denmark was one of the few supercentenarians in history to gain prominence in life for reasons other than longevity. So at this time, I would like to introduce the video of Dr. Denmark, and I hope that you all will enjoy it as much as we had having it produced. Thank you.
Well, my mother was a rather unusual woman. I always tell people she was small, but she was somewhat fierce. She was a determined person in a time when women were not getting very far in lots of areas.
Dr. Leila Denmark was a legendary pediatrician. In 1928, she was the third woman to graduate from the Medical College of Georgia.
Dr. Denmark is an incredible legend. I have so many fond memories of her, both coming to conferences and then visiting her. And she was always dressed impeccably. And this tiny little woman had so much fire and life in her eyes. I just loved the opportunity to speak to her and listen to what she had to say.
Her dad was a prosperous farmer who had tenant farmers that worked on his property. Her mother had 12 children. I think she was the third oldest.
She went to school in Portal as far as school went. Then at the 1st District A&M School in Statesboro, that's Georgia Southern now, and finished there in 1918 and went to Bessie Tift College, a girls' college at Forsyth, Georgia.
Leila graduated from Tift College in 1922 and then began working as a school teacher in chemistry and biology, holding positions in Forsyth, Ackworth, and Claxton.
She really wanted to go to medical school, so she almost pushed her way in and was admitted at Medical College of Georgia in the fall of 1924. When my father came home, I think he wanted them to get married right away. No way. She was determined she was going to finish that degree, which she did in 1928. And right after that, in a period of less than 2 weeks, she graduated, took state boards, and they got married, moved to Atlanta. And then she did her first internship.
After further training at Eggleston Hospital and the prestigious Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, she opened her private practice in rural Alpharetta, Georgia. She continued to practice there for an amazing 70 years, finally retiring at 103 years young.
She practiced like the old doctors. You did not make an appointment. You would go and you'd sign in, and if there weren't many people there, you didn't have to wait very long. She took her time, and she would wait for you to ask all your questions. We've had so few health issues through the years, and I attribute a lot of that to the excellent advice that we got from Dr. Denmark.
She believed in a child having a good schedule, good nutrition, not a lot of snacks, and parents having a degree of discipline with a child to bringing him up right. She wrote one book called Every Child Should Have a Chance. And as long as she was able to autograph them on an inside page, she would write under the title, "Do what you can to help." And I think that was always her mantra. When she died, that was what I said at her funeral service, that every child should have a chance. Do what you can to help. And she believed in that.
Dr. Leila Denmark is an icon in Georgia pediatrics, not just for her sustained career and longevity, but for her exemplary patient care, research, and pioneering leadership as a woman in medicine.
She did more than break down glass ceilings. She just did what she wanted to do and needed to do and made no excuses. She just marched ahead, literally.
She always said, eat right and do what you love to do. If you're doing what you don't like to do, that's work. And if you're doing something that you like to do, that's play. And then she'd pause, a very pregnant pause there, and she'd say, I've never worked a day in my life.
I'm going to ask at this time for Charlotte Thomas Marshall to join me on stage and accept this award, and then with y'all's permission, we're going to walk down and present it to Dr. Denmark's daughter.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor
Smile for the camera.
And there's something in this. So thank you all very much.
What an inspirational day we are having. I'm just so inspired. Kathy, thank you, and thank you, Nicole, and everyone, and Dr. Denmark, of course, was so amazing. I've run into so many people in the last 2 weeks that have had comments about her, that met her, and it thrills me. I am Stella Williams-Bailey. I'm a Georgia Women of Achievement trustee, and I have the honor to talk about our second inductee, Mary Dorothy Linden. Mary Linden was the first female graduate of the University of Georgia, receiving her master's degree in art design in 1914. And I must tell you, I wore red and black for her today. She was admitted 4 years before women. She got her degree 4 years before women were even admitted at the University of Georgia. Yes, as full-time students. During the year that they were admitted, 1919 to 1920, Mary Linden became Associate Professor of Education and Dean of Women. She taught classes in the School of Education, directed the Thespian Drama Club, and founded the first sorority at UGA. Mary Linden was born in Newnan, Georgia in 1877. She graduated from Wesleyan in 1896. Then she studied at Columbia University in New York City before coming to UGA to begin her studies. There is Mary Linden Hall at the University of Georgia, named for her. Please join me as we watch the video about the fascinating life of Mary Dorothy Linden.
Mary Linden was a visionary, and she believed in the power of education to change lives. She graduated from Wesleyan in 1896, and then she came to Athens to study at the State Normal School, and then she went on to Columbia University in New York City to further her education.
In 1914, she completed the requirements for a master's degree at the University of Georgia, the first woman to get a degree that she had earned the credits for. 5 years later, the university, in its wisdom, finally decided to admit women students to the university, and if they were going to have women students, they had to have a dean of women. So they took her away from Lucy Cobb Institute, where she had been on the faculty, and made her a member of the faculty of the University of Georgia.
And in addition to holding those faculty and administrative roles, she was very active in philanthropy in the community, very active in community service, and very active on campus, starting organizations, started a sorority. She was involved in the women's basketball team. She was quite a trailblazer in all aspects, both in terms of her professional life, but supporting students and making more opportunities available for students.
Well, you know, she came from a pretty esteemed family, and she had gotten a degree from Wesleyan. Her sister had gotten a degree from Wesleyan. Her mother had gotten a degree from Wesleyan. So it was quite a family here in Athens.
The dramatic club probably involved men and women, but the sorority and the women's basketball team, obviously she was very conscious of pushing opportunities for other women. You know, they always say, once you get through that door, don't slam it behind you, hold it open and let other people through, and she obviously did that.
Mary Linden passed away on April 5, 1924 in Washington, Georgia, from pneumonia at the age of 46. She is buried in Oconee Hill Cemetery in Athens, Georgia.
Unfortunately, in 1924, only 10 years after her graduation from UGA, she died of pneumonia. But her legacy lives on. In 1936, the university designated one of the residence halls as the Mary Linden Hall. So her legacy lives on with that name, and I think she would be especially proud that today it serves as a living learning community for those who are studying Spanish and French.
a magnificent career was attenuated there. But she was very aware of her role in women's history. She wanted her women students to be above reproach and to be true pioneers in women's education.
I found out a lot more about my great aunt than I ever knew, so I'm delighted to hear it. Now, in 1964, in the 50th anniversary of her getting the degree, they had Mary Lyndon Day here at the University of Georgia and had a big ceremony.
It's impossible to underestimate the impact that she had on the University of Georgia. Today, tens of thousands of women have graduated from UGA. I think Mary Lyndon would be really pleased to see the opportunities that she opened to women on this campus.
I would like to ask the family of Mary Lyndon to please stand, and the nominators and guests. Dean Denise Spankler, Dean of the College of Education at the University of Georgia, and the nominator will come forward and receive this award and plaque in honor of the UGA and her family, Miss Lyndon's family. Thank you. We need to take a picture.
Thank you, Stella. I was just sitting there smiling the entire time. I couldn't stop smiling about these incredible stories and these women. At this time, we are going to transition to a lovely reception and luncheon. Are you ready? But first of all, before we do that, I just want to pause for a moment and say, you know, when I look at those stories of those women, I'm thinking about Mary Lyndon, and I'm thinking she passed away at 46. It's such a juxtaposition between the two, that this one passed away so early and this one lived such a full and beautiful and wonderful life, but they both made such tremendous impact. So the message in that is, no matter what age you are, young or elderly, that you are to work as hard as you can and take as many risks as you can to create change in this world. And that's really what we're all about. I'm looking at these young people over here. Hi, Wesleyan students. How are you? My prayer is that we're all inspired. We love to hear stories, but I want us to be inspired to action and doing something in the life of another. And that's the greatest action. Sometimes, you know, we're working as trustees on behalf of GWA. You know, you all are working in the university. You all are working very hard as a historian and other individuals around the room. But actually, we create change one life at a time. So just pouring in to someone whom you know, a young person, a young woman in particular, giving that person your time and mentorship really will create incredible change. And I know that all of you do that, both individually and collectively on a daily basis, and for that we're grateful. I did say we're going to have lunch, and we are, but I want to, before we have lunch, I want us to thank a couple of people today, and they are probably out in the loggia working very diligently, but Vivi and I were reflecting this week about how very hard our respective assistants had been working on behalf of GWA this week. So I know they're not in here, are they? I think they're out in the lobby. They're out in the lobby. But Julie Dumas at Mercer and Denise Holloway at Wesleyan. That actually was pretty appropriate, but I want you to make sure when we go to lunch, would you find them and thank them? They have worked incredibly diligently to make sure that this whole occasion has been, it has been the standard of excellence that these women deserve. Additionally, I mentioned Vivia, but I do want to thank Vivia and Wesleyan for hosting once again. We so appreciate that. It's a lot of work that goes into that. But before we transition, I would, if you don't mind, when we get over there, now Vivia instituted a new, I hope this is going to be a tradition. Is it? I hesitated because you haven't committed to it. But she instituted a new tradition last year that we actually meet in the Burden Parlor before lunch to have a lovely reception, a mimosa reception. So we will be greeted with mimosas, and then we will transition to lunch. Is that right, Vivia? If you need assistance in getting to lunch, there is a shuttle outside, but also there are trustees and students who will line the path, who will help guide us to the dining hall, but please feel free to use the shuttle that is outside. That is for you. Family and nominators, I would ask that you would stay back just for about 4 or 5 minutes. We want to take some group pictures of you all, and then we'll make sure we transition you to lunch, okay? If you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and bless our food, so when you get to lunch, you feel free just to go right ahead and eat. Don't wait on us, and then we will be there in just a few moments. If you don't mind, let's have a blessing together. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for this incredible organization. Thank you for the incredible history of GWA and these incredible inductees that we've honored today. Lord, we thank you for their lives. We pray that they would indeed inspire us to act on their behalf and your behalf to make this world a better place. Thank you for the food that has been prepared for us, Lord, and thank you for the fellowship that we will enjoy together. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. If there is no further business for the group, we are concluding our ceremony today. Families will greet you up here, and we will see the rest of you over at the luncheon. Thank you all.